Omakase, the life and words of author M. Karen. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. My pronouns are they, them, and this episode was almost not here. I have had a rather hectic week with a lot of stuff happening, and almost this episode didn't get made. If you are listening to this episode, then I have been successful, and this episode has gone up on the day it was supposed to. Apologies to everyone who is used to listening to the podcast right at 7 a.m. when it goes live every Friday. I had a hectic week, and I'm sure that a bunch of you are having the same feeling right at this very moment because November is here. I am recording this on the 2nd of November 2018, which means that the month of National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, has started. I am going to be going over some beginner questions. I have a bunch of little writing advice questions that I want to get through today. By the way, if you're new to the format, here's pretty much how it goes. The show's broken into 3 parts: my week, viewer questions, and the prompt. Before we get started, the 2 points of housekeeping I always give you. The song you hear at the beginning and at the end of the show is Dream of Green by the OZ Jazz Collective. And if you check the description of this podcast/video, you can find a link to treating me to a cup of coffee or supporting me through Patreon. Alright, that stuff out of the way, let's dive right in. We have a lot to talk about today. So, what have I been doing? What have I been up to? What have I been writing, editing, and what media have I been consuming since the last time we talked? Well, I have a quick and easy answer for the second part of that statement. I have been so busy that I've barely had any time to read anything, play anything, watch anything. It really was like the culmination of a bunch of things that I knew were going to come up, but I wasn't expecting all of them to come up at the same time. Cryptic statements out of the way. What did I do this week? I spent half of the week, most of my time creatively, transcribing this really long novel. The code name I'm giving you for the time being is HC, and I've spent a lot of my time transcribing. As I said for the last couple of updates, the situation with that novel is remaining pretty much the same. The writing is, and I know this sounds big-headed, but trust me, the writing needs work, but it doesn't need as much work as, the last couple novels that I've revised, thankfully. The big thing that's going to require a lot of changing is going to be the voice of the narrator, who is, as I'm like a quarter through the story, I realize that she may just be the most unlikable person in the whole existence of the universe, so she definitely needs a little bit of work. And even as I'm typing, I'm like thinking of ways that I can maybe kind of twist what she's saying, or I guess the correct term would be spin what she's saying to make you, instead of hate her, make you go, oh, I realize that maybe there's more to this person that meets the eye. But that's for Max in the future to deal with. The big thing this week is that I sat down with one of my beta readers, the first of them to have finished reading through the manuscript of one of my latest novels. And it is in this section that I kind of want to talk about being a good feedbacker and being good at receiving feedback. Now, for my dear writerly friend Charles, who I know is listening to this, they did a fantastic job. They explained their points just like I needed them to, and I came out of that session inspired to get back into editing Alba. But you may be thinking, Max, what does it mean to be an effective beta reader, and what do you have to do to effectively take in their feedback? And like I've been saying for years, the relationship between you and your beta reader is like any other, and the key to all relationships is communication. You have to tell people what you want. You have to tell them what is it that you're looking for, and in the case of being the person doing the feedback or the person, reading through a story, you have to honestly write down your thoughts. And I feel like, and the fear that everyone has, everyone's worried about hurting someone's feelings. And I'm not saying that's not justified, because, again, sorry, there's what appears to be an ambulance outside. It's coming to get me finally. They realize Max has been working too hard. But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is that it's very easy to just focus on not wanting to hurt someone's feelings, and I feel like that's within itself a problem of communication. We encountered this when I was doing feedback with my dear writerly friend Charles. They were worried that some of their points were a little too harsh, and since I've been through this a lot, and I know, I've been in the receiving end of feedback for a long time, I basically told Charles, "Hey, listen, I know you don't want to hurt my feelings, and I know that you're not here to make me feel bad. And I also know, nobody wants to give negative feedback. Nobody wants to say, hey, Max, you kinda, you really screwed up this part of the story." I'm not saying Charles said that, I'm just kind of being really vague about things. And there were times during the feedback process where I would just tell Charles, hey, just lay it on me. I've been through this enough where, I know you're not actively trying to hurt my feelings. And as long as we end up, breaking down what the feedback means and ultimately the path that I can carve out to improve the story, then that's ultimately fine. I think that if it's your first time doing feedback, that can be incredibly daunting, incredibly scary, because, and especially if you've been spending months, even years editing a story, the last thing you want to hear is, whoops, you screwed up this part of the story, or this one thing that you spent a lot of time on actually didn't pan out the way you wanted it to. But that's what happens sometimes, though. And I can tell you from my experience revising this novel that I thought the problem of the story was one thing, but, from the perspective of one of my beta readers, one of the main issues in the story was something completely different from what I was looking at. I had my sights set on one particular target, and the next thing I know, I'm spun around 180 degrees, and I realize, oh, yeah, I forgot to talk about that, didn't I? That's what happens, And this is the reason why feedback is so important for writing, because even though you think you know the story perfectly, and you have analyzed everything, and trust me, I am merciless when it comes to the revision of my stories, even then I realized, oh, I wouldn't have caught that. So I get it. I can completely understand how someone doing this for the first time on both sides, the person doing the feedback and the person getting the feedback, how it can be scary for both parties. And I think what helps is to, first and foremost, talk about things, really break down things, really explain, and I'm going to slide this in. The number one thing that helped me the most, and one of my favorite things that I picked up from creative writing courses and from my amazing creative writing teacher, Marcy, whenever you're giving someone feedback, this is for you, feedbackers, people reading someone's story, whenever you're giving someone feedback on their writing, preface everything you say with I did not like this passage. I feel that you didn't foreshadow this element of the story enough. I got lost at this part of the story. I didn't understand the plot twist. Because let's face it, okay? Telling someone that their book sucks is not effective feedback. Telling someone that the plot twist was bad is not effective feedback. Telling someone I was not emotionally connected to the antagonist and the protagonist's struggle, so the climax didn't resonate with me emotionally. That right there is way better feedback than the ending sucked. Communication, breaking things down, being clear. Because I know, nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. And I think that if you come in understanding that the ultimate goal is to help the novel improve and be better, then at least the grounds for the conversation will be set equally on both sides. Both the writer and the person giving feedback are here to make the writing the best that it can be. I know, and I know a bunch of you can relate to this, when you're doing feedback in a class and you know the one person who's really just there to prove everyone wrong, and their feedback is all grounded on trying to catch you, on trying to get you for something that you messed up in the writing, something that they can turn to and say, this right here is why your story is not good. And those kind of people always got kicked out of the class eventually, because Marcy would spot them and go, that right there is not good feedback. So, what are we here for? To tell good stories. And trust me, it's not easy receiving feedback, especially on something that you've been working on for a long time. But at the end of the day, I think it's better to get the unfortunate, the unhappy pieces of feedback from people you trust, from people who you respect, from people who are your friends, from people who understand what you're trying to do, than to get it from the faceless mob of the internet. So I know that I've been rambling on for a little bit, and this kind of segment is kind of aimed at a couple of people who reached out to me since they heard that I was going to be doing beta feedback. And my ultimate advice is to talk. And I know that that sounds even a little condescending, but I really mean it. Talk. Ask them for more. Ask them to clarify. And if you're uncertain, ask them what they would do instead. Ask them for advice. Ask your beta readers to explain what they mean. Ask them for how things made them feel. Ask them if they felt anything at certain points in the story. Ask them if they caught the foreshadowing that you laid down. Talk to them. And for the person receiving the feedback, I would like to inspire you to not expect it to be all positive. I know deep down we all want it to be. We all want to have a feedback session where you sit down and everybody tells you they love the book. And even though that's kind of like the fantasy, I honestly feel that if I got that, I would actually feel a little self-conscious. Because if nobody's finding anything wrong with your story, there must definitely be something wrong with your story. I don't know, that was clever wordplay that I didn't fully intend. But what I mean is that, like, it seems so endlessly unlikely that if you send your book out to a handful of people, that none of them are gonna find anything wrong. I mean, like, you know, for crying out loud, my wife is reading this book, and she's the comma queen, and she's just going, like, I can see her, sometimes she's, like, editing the book before we go to bed, and I can see her putting commas, I can see her just with her red pen going, like, I like the sentence, Max, but maybe just put a comma in here, just sprinkle a couple commas, and she doesn't actually say anything. She's been really good. She knows that it kills me to know that she's doing the feedback right there, like 2 inches away from me in the bed. And she's just been very quiet about it. She's been very sweet. But, you know, it's that sort of thing. Well, ultimately, why are we doing feedback for? We want to see other points of view. We want to see what other people think of the story. And we want to find the spots at which we came a little short. There is no negative feedback that you can't revise out of. There's nothing wrong in your story that you can't write. And trust me, I talk about a lot about how certain parts of the writing don't get easier with time. This one pretty much does. You kind of get used to not expecting your stories to be absolute perfection. And I guess it's funny for me because, like, sometimes I get comments from, you know, new writers, you know, people who are, you know, attempting NaNoWriMo and working through it, and they're so stressed. They are so stressed about the first draft being good. They're so stressed about that first page being good. They're so stressed about getting the first line right. And meanwhile, I'm in the background laughing because once again, one of the pieces of feedback I'm getting is, Max, the first chapter is just a little bit overbloated. And it's what I do with every single novel. Raven's Gem, I cut the first chapter off. A Secret Named Sophie, I cut most of the first chapter out. Justine's Blood, I cut most of the first chapter out. Turns out, my novels start really good if I just skip the first chapter and I start you in chapter 2. But that's what happens, though, right? That's life. That's life. Anyhow, I've gone on for way too long on this point. Anyone out there, especially those of you crazy, beautiful, amazing people who are attempting NaNoWriMo this month, who are doing it, who are writing 1,667 words every day. To all of you crazy people, keep on writing. Don't look back. Don't you dare revise as you edit. Don't you dare do that. I am going to be watching. And I swear to whatever hidden power there is in the darkness of space, that if I look over your shoulder and you're revising yesterday's writing instead of writing today's writing, there's gonna be trouble, okay? You go out there, you do your thing. To all of you revising for NaNoWriMo, keep your chin high, keep working on it. And to the handful of you who reached out to me who are doing beta feedback, communication. Ask them the questions that you really need answers to. Tell them. Ask them to explain themselves. If they don't like something, ask them why. And I recommend you to ask for their reactions. Not if they liked something, but what it made them feel. Even if it is negative emotions. Ask them in their feedback to tell you how they felt. Okay? Okay. And now, before we go anywhere, I want to take a second to thank the sponsors for this show. Omakase is brought to you thanks to you, the lovely people who support me through coffee.com/mkieran and patreon.com/mkieran. Patreon is the #1 place to support me, and what I do, you pledge $1 a month, you get cool perks, and a bunch of other stuffs. If you pledge a little bit extra, you also get shoutouts in the middle of the show. First off, I want to give a big shout out to my big, amazing, generous Patreon, Atilek. Atilek has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about their writing and their art over at deviantart.com/ahtilak. I also want to give a big shout out to my other super generous sponsor, Hero Song. Hero Song is writing LGBT positive novels. You can find them on smashwords.com. Just do a search for Hero Song. And a quick shout out to the rest of my big patrons. A. Howard, Elisa Dudley, Amelia, Angela, Lishadra, Gilbert Gudrow, Irina Phoenix, Lacey, Mark Maruska, Nicola, Pat Eitzen, Polly Craftwell, Soulmuse, and Synexia. It is now time for viewer questions. Every week, I take questions from the comments of my videos, from my email, from Twitter, and from Tumblr. And I feature a couple of them here on this show. This week, we're going to be covering some classic NaNoWriMo topics. First off, we have panic. No outline, no problem. The second point is going to be about what to do in between writing sessions. How can you inspire yourself, to motivate yourself, and to grow closer to the writing while you're not writing? Let's take it from the top, because I feel that this is something a bunch of you are most likely going to be dealing with relatively soon, especially if you're new to the process. If you're attempting National Novel Writing Month NaNoWriMo for the first time. I don't know what your outline looks like, and as I was preparing myself mentally for doing this episode today, I realized that I have no clue what other people's outlines look like. I have been using a similar method for like half a decade now, and I realize it's dawned on me finally that it's likely that we haven't taken the same steps to prepare ourselves for a novel. I'm not going to go over my guide. It's on YouTube. It's been there for like 3 years. Look up how to plan a novel from the ground up. It should have a green thumbnail. That's me. That's mine. But one of the main things that I do at the beginning of the outlining and planning process is that I kind of set for myself a landmark, an anchor for the story, a definition, a single sentence telling me what I want the story to be about. As I mentioned previously, this statement, this definition of what I believe I want the story to be, is an anchor. A point where I can always come back to in the imaginary world to refuel myself and to guide myself. It is in that way not only anchor and home, but also compass that shows us where we need to go to return back to where we're meant to be. If during the planning process, when I was sitting down and really thinking critically about what I wanted to write about, if I ended up deciding that I wanted to write a novel about, and the following is what I would literally have in big, bold letters on the first page of my notebook. A story about the horrors of what it is to be a mecha pilot. If that is what I truly wanted to write about, and I had decided on it, and I wrote it in big, bold letters on the first page of the notebook, or on the beginning of the outline file, during the writing process, during the hard days and the good days, whenever I felt uninspired, whenever I felt without direction, I would go back to that sentence. A story about the horrors of what it is to be a mecha pilot. And this sentence can take a million forms. It can be a lie told across 3 generations. The fall of a beautiful world. The last words spoken by a mentor to their final apprentice. A love story without romance. A tragedy without death. Sometimes simple concepts or complex ideas inspire us to write. And this is why, in part, I always try to inspire you to write down everything. Seal it in ink and paper. It is there, physically in the real world. Write it on a piece of paper and put it on the wall. Make a wallpaper for your computer with those words on it. Whenever you're distracted, whenever you feel aimless, whenever you run out of ideas, remind yourself, where are you going? To a love story without romance. To a tragedy without death. To the final words of a mentor to their final apprentice. To a story about the horrors of what it is to be a mecha pilot. And it is this anchor, this compass, this single statement that can serve to remind us of, why we even set out to make the journey in the first place. This is why, and it's weird for me, because I've been telling stories in this way for so long, that sometimes, most of the time, I'm reminded that not everybody does this. So sometimes when I'm, coaching someone or I'm giving them help, I ask them, well, what did you want to write about? Why did you start this journey? And sometimes the replies are, I don't know. Or the reply was, I just liked this character and I wanted to just see what their story would be about. And that's not inherently a bad thing. I'm not trying to tell you, again, that, what I do is superior or better. Ultimately, it's just what has helped me. My advice, my opinion, etc., etc. And the advice that I have to those people, and to anyone out there who is panicking right now on day 2 of NaNoWriMo, or anyone who may be panicking in the course of the next couple of days when you download the podcast, or you just happen to tune in, and you think to yourself, I have no idea what should be happening next. I spent the whole month working on the outline, and now I have no idea. It's day 2, and I am out of ideas, out of options. I don't know what to do next. Well, before any of you start thinking about chasing any shiny new blood bunnies, I want to inspire you to look at your story. Not the outline. Not the pages that you have written, but imagine the story as it came to you. That little nugget of inspiration, that mote of colorful, wondrous ideas. That single element that we sometimes stumble upon in the midst of living. That word, that sentence, that character, that moment. Sometimes we write entire novels just to end up at one sentence. Think about your story. And it's fine if you didn't do this from the start. You can always do this. And sometimes the story will change. And sometimes this is going to change too, and that's fine. But it helps to have a compass. It helps to have an anchor. It helps to have a landmark by which we can judge how far we have come along the journey. Think of your story and ask yourself, what do I want this story to be about? And what I want you to write is not a single word. It's not romance and death, retribution, revenge. No. A complex statement. Hopefully one that involves your characters. And whenever you're feeling uninspired, whenever you don't know what should happen next, remind yourself of that statement. Remind yourself of what you wrote. And imagine, not what should happen in a story like this, but what has to happen in the story you have in your hands. What has to happen next? Where does the story need to go? What are our characters about to face? How is their world about to change before their very eyes? And this is something that I come back to, mostly because sometimes when I'm reading a story, when, somebody else's book, or, enjoying a movie, or, watching a show, especially in TV, to be entirely honest, you stumble upon stories where the beats of the story themselves are not so much inspired by the events of the story, but they're rather inferred by the genre that the story is supposed to be. Things happen not because they make sense for the story, but because they make sense for the genre. This show is a horror show, so clearly the next scene has to be this kind of scene. And that sort of stuff is endlessly boring to me, and I'm literally about to yawn just from thinking about it. And I want to inspire you to not look at your story as its genre. Do not look at your story as its niche, but to look at your story as its own thing. What is the next thing that should happen in your story? Because your story is its own thing, and you need not attach yourself to the expectations, the tropes, the cliches of another thing. Write sincerely. Look at your story. Look at your characters. Look at where you want to go. And ask yourself, how can I get a little closer to that in today's writing session? Okay? Okay. Yeah. I'm getting to that point in the recording session where I'm mellowing out. I'm right in the groove now, and it feels good. Let's talk about the second question of today, okay? I had one of my lovely patrons reach out to me because they've heard over the years that one of the things that helps me the most, that helps me find ideas, and that helps me connect to the story, is to go out on walks and to listen to music. And this is true. It is something that I do, especially when I'm writing a story. I mean, and I've been doing it too when I've been revising. It's this thing where I go out. I have a playlist for everything. I have a playlist for characters. I have a playlist for entire stories. And when I want to think about a story, I go out on a walk and I put on music. Now, as my lovely patron was asking me, they were wondering, what is it exactly that I do when I'm walking? What is it that I'm thinking about? What are the questions that I'm going over in my mind? How exactly is it that it helps me to go out on walks and think about my stories through the help of music? And to me, this kind of meditation while in motion because it's the same thing that I do, like, and that I've done since I was little, when I would be in car rides, or, when I would be in the bus, or, in the back of a car, just listening to music, looking out the window, and not really looking at what was beyond the window, but rather just imagining my characters. There's something about being in motion plus music, that has always enabled me to daydream. And while I am in this state, I like to think of my story and my characters, not only to get close to them, but also to find ideas. This is something that was wonders when when my anxiety was really bad and writing was really hard, right around this time last year. And I went back to writing by hand. I went back to going to coffee shops to get out of the office, to get writing done physically, mechanically, with my hands. And I would be lying to you if I told you that that was everything that helped. One of the key things that I feel was pivotal to helping me get back to writing in full was that my local coffee shop is about 10 to 15 minutes away, walking. That meant that every morning before sitting down to write, I had 10 to 15 minutes to listen to music and to think about my characters. By the time I was on the second book that I had written, I subconsciously realized that as I was walking, I guess I consciously realized that I was subconsciously walking to the coffee shop, imagining what was going to be happening next in the story. I would ask myself, without realizing it, I asked myself what needed to happen next in the story. Because the story had been this way, and things of this such had happened, and characters had made these choices. And in the act of thinking and listening to music, I would imagine the consequences, and I would imagine what would happen next. And I would arrive at the coffee shop, and I would get my drink, and I would sit down, and I would already have not the full image, because writing is chaotic, and writing is the act of discovery, but I would have at least a starting point. I would realize in the act of thinking and walking and daydreaming in motion that I believed that the next scene had to be about this, or the next scene had to be about that, or that it made sense for the next scene and the next chapter to be about these two characters, and what had happened previously, the fallout of their choice, the repercussions for their mistake. I have become a strong believer that ideas will not find you at your desk. If you sit down expecting to brainstorm a whole novel in one sitting, I believe you are unlikely to succeed at that. The more time that passes, the more I realize that ideas find me when I'm not looking for them, or when I'm not actively asking for them. It took me a novel and a half to realize that I was asking myself questions when I was walking. I would just put on music that felt like the right music for that setting, that felt like the right music for that world and those characters, and I would imagine what had happened yesterday. I would imagine what I had written the day before, and I would, without realizing it, start thinking about today's events. I would look forward to them. I would be excited for them, because to me they were real. And I was the first person experiencing that world and the things that were happening in it. Almost just like you look forward and you wonder about what's going to happen next in your favorite show, or your favorite movie, or in the next book of your favorite book series. You daydream about it, and you think about it. And this here, I don't think it's a particularly... I don't think that I've stumbled upon some hidden gem or secret technique. I think we all kind of do this in one way or another. Daydreaming is powerful, and it is important. Daydreaming makes things feel more real. When they're bad, and when they're good. I talked about this last week, about the power of just imagining. Just like we feed ourselves negative things and we keep imagining bad things happening, and even though things may not unfold that way, we have made ourselves miserable by imagining the worst case scenario and the consequences of the worst case scenario. You can spend days making yourself miserable that way, but you can also inspire yourself, and I am certain that you have done this without realizing it. I am certain that you have been out doing something. And if you have a menial job, like the one I had back when I worked at a laboratory, you have had entire hours of doing the same task, and while your body's in automatic, you're picturing, you're thinking about your story. This is something we do. I've just found that to me it is easier to do it while walking, while being in motion, sitting in a bus, in the back of a car, headphones on, and music playing. The music begins, and I lose myself in the melody. And as I am looking out the window, looking right ahead, I start to imagine the world. I think of my characters, their struggle, their emotion, their highs and their lows. I think about what has happened to them, and I imagine what will hopefully, maybe, just maybe, happen to them next. I hope that helps. And if anything, I hope that I have shown you another point of view. I've mentioned this previously, but if you have questions you would like me to cover in a future episode, this is a great time to do so. I am going through a lot of beginner or new writer questions, and let's just say that my pile of questions has grown a little thin over the last couple of weeks, so this is a great chance to sneak in a question, especially if it fits, the overall theme of November. But anyhow, the second part of the show's over. Let's move over to the final section of the show. Today, I have a creative prompt for you. Something to think about, something to write about. If you're uncertain what to do today on the second day of NaNoWriMo, I have something for you. It is important not only to think about our stories, but also to actively sit down and push them forward. No amount of planning, no amount of wishful thinking will make that novel a reality without you sitting down and doing it. If you picked up this podcast to procrastinate today, well, guess what? Procrastination time is over. It is time for you to sit down and get some writing done. The format for the prompt is the same as always. I am going to propose to you a scenario, a situation. I'm going to give you ideas. I'm going to tell you how I would tackle it. And I want you, as you're listening to this, to imagine, to prepare yourself mentally for when the episode is over. Or you can pause if you're just ready to sit down and get some writing done. Even if it's just a little bit. Even if it's just a few sentences, just in the chance that it inspires you to go all the way, to write that full chapter, to complete your daily quota for today. The title of this prompt is In the Middle of the Night. I am a sucker for moments and stories in which a character has a chance to reflect, to look into themselves. And I think it is fitting to have a moment like this at the beginning of your story. And since November has started, a bunch of you are writing. I want you to think about your story. Think about your character. And I want you to find them during a sleepless night. It is at the bottom of the night when we are most susceptible to these sticky thoughts, the unfortunate feelings, the moments in which our characters are staying up at night, unable to close their eyes. I want you to take one of your characters in this very same moment. Find them during one sleepless night. as they find themselves looking up at the ceiling, their eyes fully adapted to the darkness of night. They may be in their cot at the barracks. They may be in the back of their car. They may be in the bed of their latest lover. They may be in their own bed or someone else's. They may be alone with company or longing for the warmth of that other person next to them in bed. Your character is staying up, looking up at the ceiling of their room. What does it look like in the darkness of night? Is it all they see, the blue hues, the dark shapes, the outlines of the furniture? Or is there moonlight spilling in through the windows, through the drapes? Do they see a mirage in the ceiling? Or is there nothing? Is it bleak? Are they following the form of the ceiling fan as it lazily spins and spins? What does the night feel like? Is it cold November? Is it the middle of summer? Is it the middle of the rainy season? When are we? Where are we? And what is it that is keeping your character awake in the middle of the night? This is a great chance to explore their inner thoughts, their inner dialogue. Because I don't think it is strange for anyone to stay up in the middle of the night, wondering the hard, impossible, unsurmountable questions. Things like, why do I not love him anymore? How did I end up here? Why do I hate my life so much? But not all questions need to be so sharp. Not all questions need to have such horrible, horrible implications. They may also be staying up at night, not with dread in their gut, but joy. They may turn over and look at the person sharing the bed with them. They may be looking out at the ceiling of their brand new apartment in that really good part of the city and ask themselves, how did I get this lucky? I can't believe I've done it. I've got my dream job, and tomorrow my real life is about to begin. What is it like to be in the shoes of this person, of this character? You know them better than I do, but you must tell the reader. You must show them what they feel and how it makes them feel. Let your characters speak, regardless of whether it is first person or third. Let them speak honestly, candidly, and if need be, furiously. What is keeping them up? Because there are people who can go to bed with a clear, light conscience in spite of their horrible deeds, and people who stay up at night in spite of having just earned themselves the world. Murder, Victor, Prince, and Pauper. All of us stay up at night sometimes thinking, wondering, why is your character here tonight? What is it that is keeping your character awake in the middle of the night? Is it joy? Is it dread? Is it hope? Or is it something else? Something not so easily encapsulated in a single word. A complex, mixed feeling. A cocktail of what-ifs and hopefullys and maybes. How has your character ended up here? I want you to examine, to seek to find the answer as to why it is they're staying up in the middle of the night. And so, welcome back to episode 20 of Omakase, my writing advice and inspiration podcast. I hope you had fun today. Again, I apologize for the slight delay on getting this episode out. Again, I had a crazy week. I hope, though, that between now and the next time we meet, that you sit down and get some writing done. It's the only way your book's going to become a reality. You must sit down and write and revise and revise. Okay? Okay. If anything, find solace in knowing that the mountain you're attempting to climb, the mountain that you are defeating every single day with every single word, is not an alien thing. It is a mountain many have surpassed before, and just like they have done it, so can you. Okay? Okay. And now, I am going to step over into the end of the video club. I'm going to give every one of my patrons a shout out. Everyone pledging $1 and up. I just want to say, to all of you attending NaNoWriMo, I wish you the best of luck. Go out there. Write fearlessly. Okay? Okay. You can go now. You can tune out now if you want. I am going to take a second now to give a big shout out to every single one of the lovely people supporting me on patreon.com/mkieran. Every single person. You can pledge $1 today and get a month of me butchering your name live before your very ears. Beginning today, in alphabetical order as sorted by Patreon: A. Howard, Atlac, Alistair Baywood, Alisa Dudley, Amanda Stevens, Amelia, Amy Palmer, Angela, and the other Angela. I forgot we had two Angelas now. And Yexohoshi, Biting the Sun, and everybody's favorite, Blarg! Brenda, C.E. Richards, Caitlin, and the other Caitlin, Kyriat Eccleston, Kathy Lindsay, Lee Shadra, Christiane, Christine Dennis, Kristen Lofton, Clem Pastor. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking that, like, nobody do this. Don't do this. You're thinking about it. Don't do this. Because, you know, we have, like, Angela and the other Angela. They're both named Angela. I want to clarify this. No one is titled the other Angela. And and just like we have Caitlin and the other Caitlin. And I was actually thinking to myself, I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if I'm like, Clem Pastor and the other Clem Pastor? What? Now, I know a bunch of you think that's funny, and you're like, I could drop $1 on that. I'm just saying, don't do it. I mean, give me money, but just like, I don't know. Give me your real name, or the name that you want me to shout out. So far, nobody's asked for, like, really, really mean-spirited shoutouts, which I really appreciate. It just goes to show you're all lovely people. Anyhow, Clem Pastor, Dwayne Jackson, Eleanor Rousseau, Joffrey Raby, Gilbert Goodrow, Hero Song, Irina Phoenix, Janosch Hibotsky, Jaytana Kirkwood, Jeffrey James Williams, Juan Nunes, KM Anderson, Kamishwar Rao Shaluri, Kaylee, Kiel, Kit Lee, Lacey, Lier Killo, MT Locatelli, Mark Maruska, Mary Foster Smith, Nicola, Nicole Grissom, Nicolay, Noam Sohar, Novels and Tomes, Pablo. Welcome back to the Pablo ASMR. Pat Eichson, Polly Craftool, Raquel Fernandez. Oh no, I forgot how to pronounce her name. Rhiannon August, who is still disappointment. Yup, that's what I meant to say with my mouth. Those are exactly the words that I meant to say with my mouth. Rhiannon August. Listen, it takes 63 episodes, but Bakugo gets alright, okay? Listen, I'm not saying he's good. Kikiri has begun referring to him as the boy, which I don't know how I feel about it. It takes him a while, but he gets character development. What am I supposed to do? Not point out when the writing is good? I can't believe that it takes 62 episodes for a character to get good is a sentence that came out of my mouth, but you know, today's full of surprises. Roa! Shimmer Tales, Sky D. White, Soul Muse, Sylvia Leitilla, Synexia, Wendy Christopher, and coffee shoutouts. That's right. Another way to support me is by treating me to a cup of coffee over at coffee.com/mkrin. That is ko-fi.com/mkrin. There's a link to it in the description of this video/podcast. If you buy me coffee, I will also give you a shout out. And here we have Mark Maruska double dipping with the caption "Dragons?" ? Check. That's a reference to last week's episode where I ranted about how I am slightly tired of dragons in fantasy fiction, mostly because they're dropped in as a kind of, well, you clearly have to have dragons because it's fantasy, as opposed to actually asking for their place in the world. Once again, I am a huge nerd for world building, and I will never ever take shorthand when it comes to world building. Just because it's a fantasy world, you don't have to have goblins and orcs and dwarves. Make it your own thing. Do your own thing, okay? And like, cut it back on the dragons, jeez, or make them cool, or do something else, come on! It's writing! You have unlimited special effects budget, do something crazy and wild! Make every character a dragon. Oh no, someone out of spite is like, hey Max, guess what? I have increased the count of dragons in my story by 5,000% after your comment. And I'm like, you know what? That's fair, I did ask for it. Anyhow, hey there! Welcome back to the end of the video club, where I rant about dragons. I don't hate dragons. I just feel they're a little overused, you know? And I talked about Chrono Cross, and, you know, a podcast is over when I end up mentioning Chrono Cross for the PS1. On what year? Was it 2002? You know what? The podcast is over. You're all gone. Nobody's listening to this. Chrono Cross. I sure hope I didn't swear in there. I kind of slipped back into Max Plays Games mode. Chrono Cross was originally released in... What? 1999? That's crazy. I thought the game was way older. Kurano Kurosu. It's a 1999 role-playing video game developed and published by Square for the PlayStation 1 console. Alright. Anyhow, someday I will finish that game. Someday I will stop hating that game for 2 minutes and I will actually finish it. Anyhow, hey there guys. How are y'all doing today? Today, this episode... Look at me, I'm trying to bring it back. No one's listening. I'm trying to bring it back. Hey. I'm sorry for the episode going up late today. I've had a crazy week. And, one of the craziest elements was actually finally getting feedback on my book and having one of those moments where it's one of those things where, like, you're so focused on doing a thing you completely forget about the other things. So I was like, yeah, the story's pretty solid. I'm pretty sure I made no mistakes in the story of Alba. And thankfully, like, world building, plot-wise, I didn't make any big, mistakes or oversights. It was mostly an issue of, whoops, I forgot to mention that! Or whoops, I was not thinking about that particular element. It's that thing where, like, you buy a new pair of jeans and you're so excited to wear them that you forget to tear off that sticker on the side of them. What, that's never happened to you? Me neither. Totally not. We were all 14 ones, listen. Anyhow, hi there. I hope you're having a lovely day. And I hope that between now and the next time we meet, that you get some writing done and also take some time for yourself. Take care of the writing if you want to take care of the writer. If you want to take care of the writing, you must also take care of the writing. Okay. Okay, it's way too early in the morning for me to be doing this. If you want to take care of the writing, you must also take care of the writing. Hey guys, I love you all. You're all wonderful. I'm gonna finish this cup of coffee and then I'm gonna get back to editing this episode. I love you all. Take care and get those words done.